The abrupt resignation of FBI Director Chris Wray was a result of an immense pressure campaign by Donald Trump and his allies. And that push to force Wray out is part of a larger effort to undo half a century of institutional reforms to the FBI passed in the wake of Watergate and the decades-long reign of J. Edgar Hoover. Donald Trump wants his choice for FBI Director Kash Patel to wield the authority of the Bureau against his perceived enemies, much in the way that Hoover did during his tenure. But, as my next guest writes, Patel views the FBI very differently from Hoover, and he is promising a crusade not just against Trump's critics, but against the Bureau itself. Hoover used to describe the Bureau as the one bulwark against a hidden left-wing conspiracy that penetrated all corners of American life. In Patel's world, the FBI is the conspiracy. Beverly Gage is a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian and author of G-Man, J. Edgar Hoover and the Making of the American Century. She also has a new piece in the New Yorker today asking, how would Kash Patel compare to J. Edgar Hoover? Professor, it's great to have you. I am really enjoying your book, which is just a masterful, masterful piece of work, so thank you for writing it. As someone who wrote a biography of J. Edgar Hoover and who's watching all this unfold, your reaction to Wray's announcement today and what it means for the Bureau?
Well, I'm sorry the book is so relevant at the moment, but I think Wray's resignation is a real sign that the Bureau is in trouble. You know, Hoover had lots of faults, but he believed in the Bureau, and he actually mostly tried to insulate it from political pressure that he didn't like. And here we're just seeing kind of naked announcements that the Bureau is going to be used as a political weapon.
Yeah, you write this. Hoover, for all his faults and abuses of power, was nevertheless an institution builder. He believed in the FBI's nonpartisan independence. Patel's chief goal, by contrast, is to weaponize the FBI as a partisan force to protect Trump and wreak vengeance on his administration's enemies. If such naked politicization happens to undermine public faith in the FBI, so much the better. The big difference here is Hoover ran the FBI as kind of fiefdom, where his own ideological axes to grind, petty grievances, wherever. It was a vector for that. It was not a vector for the president in power. In fact, sometimes it was deployed against them. How different would it be to have an FBI basically acting in a Hooverite fashion, but on behalf of the guy in the White House?
Hoover served under 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans. So he was, for all of his faults, a sort of legitimately nonpartisan figure. And of course, the critique when he died, he was there for 48 years, was that the Bureau had become too independent. It was too insulated. In fact, that, the FBI director was more powerful than the president. So I don't think we want to go back to the era of J. Edgar Hoover. But in the circumstance we're in now, I think you can see some of the virtues in that kind of independence and the ability to be insulated from this kind of really direct, bald political pressure.
You make this really important point that I think it's worth us lingering on for a moment. Obviously, there are constitutional checks on abuses of power through, those rights secured in the Constitution, and judges and approving warrants and things like that. Now, those can sometimes be flimsy in the real world, but they exist. You make the point that the worst abuses, you say the worst abuses of FBI power have usually come through its intelligence and surveillance operations. Making a criminal case in court is hard. There are laws and procedures and evidentiary standards. Intelligence investigations operate in a more nebulous realm. Tell me more about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the FBI is this funny kind of hybrid organization where, on the one hand, they're a law enforcement agency, but we've also made them into our domestic intelligence agency. And certainly during Hoover's day, it was the intelligence side where almost all of the abuses occurred, in part because, intelligence doesn't have quite the same kind of evidentiary standards. Often you're not trying to make a case in court. You're just trying to kind of get dirt on people, figure out what's going on. And, at various points, the FBI can use wiretaps and bugs and even infiltration of political organizations if they deem that they are somehow dangerous enough. And so it's a very powerful set of tools. There are some restrictions on it, but, this is a big secretive bureaucracy. And in the hands of the wrong people, even that power of investigation and surveillance and information gathering can be really powerful and dangerous.
What would you ask a senator who came to you, having read your book, and was preparing, say, for a hearing of the nominee, Kash Patel, trying to think through what are questions or concerns they should be airing and focusing on?
Well, I think one of the things that he could think about is really just whether Kash Patel knows how to run a bureaucracy. I mean, I think one of the things that is alarming about Patel is not only this idea that he's going to weaponize the Bureau, but that he kind of wants to come in with a wrecking ball and in some ways destroy certainly the upper echelons of the institution itself. So he professes to be a great ally of the rank and file, but he wants to destroy, shut down, get rid of the D.C. headquarters. And that's just a very strange thing to think about, a massive law enforcement and intelligence bureaucracy operating without a headquarters. So there are lots of political questions to ask. There are lots of questions about, respect for law. But there's also a question of, does he actually want the FBI to be a functioning organization or not?
Beverly Gage, thank you very much for your time tonight.